Good morning, everyone, and welcome to NJBIA Live from the State Capitol. I'm Vinny Civitello, Communications Manager for the New Jersey Business and Industry Association. With us today is our very own Vice President of Government Affairs, Andrew Musick. A few housekeeping matters before we get started. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be emailed to you tomorrow along with the PowerPoint for today's presentation, so be on the lookout for those. I'd also like to draw your attention to the Handouts and Questions tabs. In the Handouts tab, you can download the PowerPoint slides for today's webinar. I get a lot of questions asking how people can do that, so just open up your GoToWebinar panel, click on Handouts, and click on the PowerPoint file there. The Questions tab is where you can ask questions for our speaker. Andrew would be happy to take all of your questions, so don't hesitate to write them in as they come to you. And I can't stress that enough. Don't hesitate to write them in as they come to you, or you might forget what you wanted to ask by the time we hit the Q&A. Today's presentation is going to be on the shorter side, so how long it goes is just depending on how many questions you guys ask. So now let's get things started. Andrew?
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us on today's Live from the State Capitol webinar. On Sunday, July 1st, lawmakers approved and the governor signed into law the fiscal year 2019 budget, which represents $37.4 billion in spending. That's an 8% increase over fiscal year 2018. The budget's partially funded by a series of tax increases, many of which will impact the business community here in New Jersey. And most notably, the budget deal comes with an increase in the corporate business tax, the inclusion of combined reporting, and an increase in the income tax rate for those making $5 million or more per year. NJBIA remains strongly opposed to increasing those taxes as they limit New Jersey's affordability and competitiveness for businesses within the state. Our government affairs team spent the weekend in Trenton speaking with legislators to communicate the impact of these proposals on NJBIA's membership. The budget also includes a $3.2 billion pension payment, as well as a $765 million surplus. We'll get into a little bit of the details now. Included in the FY 2019 budget are a number of changes to the way in which New Jersey taxes corporations. This includes a 4-year CBT surtax on corporate taxpayers with New Jersey allocated income that exceeds $1 million. For tax years beginning on or after January 1st of 2018 through December 31st of 2019, the surtax is 2.5%. So this means that the tax rate will be levied at 11.5%. And for tax years beginning on or after January 1st of 2020 through December 31st of 2021, the surtax is 1.5%, bringing New Jersey's rate, which currently sits at 9%, up to 10.5%. The new law also institutes combined reporting, as well as market-based sourcing. Both of these provisions go into effect for tax years beginning on or after January 1st of 2019. Under the new law, New Jersey adopts combined reporting, which applies to groups of companies with common ownership that are engaged in a unitary business where one company is subject to tax in New Jersey. Some of the more notable provisions of the combined reporting statute include water's edge filing with worldwide and affiliated group elections and the exclusion of domestic 80/20 companies. It also excludes insurance companies other than certain captive combinable captive insurance companies. There's a special deduction to address the potential accounting impacts. And finally, the apportionment factor is determined using the Joyce method. Market-based sourcing will require that services are to be sourced to the location in which the service is received. New Jersey will join New York, Connecticut, and Pennsylvania, which have also adopted market-based sourcing. While a previous version of the bill included a special dividends tax and surcharge on repatriated income, the provision was not included in the final piece of legislation. However, the dividends received deduction, or the DRD, is changed for tax years beginning after December 31st of 2016 by reducing the amount of the exclusion from 100% to 95% for 80% or more owned subsidiaries. Now we'll move to the gross income tax. The FY 2019 budget makes a number of changes to New Jersey's gross income tax, including a multi-millionaire's tax with a new top income tax bracket of 10.75% for income over $5 million. The new law also taxes investment management services, or what has previously been referred to as carried interest. There is language that states that if a corporation provides capital or funding to a partner, it is not a hedge fund and the income that flows up shouldn't be subject to the additional tax. However, the carried interest fee does not go into effect until Connecticut, Massachusetts, and New York all enact similar legislation. Additionally, changes to the gross income tax law contain an increase in the state's income tax deduction for property taxes. Under current law, a resident taxpayer may take a deduction of up to $10,000 on their principal residence. Under the new law, the maximum deduction is increased to $15,000. There's an increase in the earned income tax credit from 35% to 40% of the federal credit, and this is going to be phased in over 3 years. Finally, there's also a new child and dependent care tax credit. The credit is available to taxpayers who are allowed the federal child and dependent care tax credit that have income of $60,000 or less and that incur employment-related expenses while caring for a child or a dependent. And this would be an expense for household services for the care of a dependent or child incurred to enable the taxpayer to hold gainful employment. Also enacted on July 1 was the Tax Amnesty Program, which requires the Director of Division of Taxation to establish a 90-day state tax amnesty period that ends no later than January 15th of 2019. This program will apply to any taxpayers with liabilities for returns that were due on or after February 1st of 2009, but prior to September 1st of 2017. And that allows taxpayers to avoid any penalties with the exception of criminal and civil fraud penalties. And this does apply to any tax liability. So that's any gross income tax, any CBT, or any sales tax liability. Now, there are a number of bills that have been approved by the legislature, but await further action by the governor. And I'm going to go through those now. The first one being the Jersey City Employer Payroll Tax Bill. Under A4163, any municipality having a population over 200,000 individuals may impose and collect an employer payroll tax of up to 1%. The bill does not levy a tax, rather it only gives the municipality, in this case Jersey City, the authority to do so. Currently, Newark is the only other municipality that imposes and collects an employer payroll tax, and this bill would allow Jersey City to do the same. A4163 would only become effective upon the enactment of S2, which makes changes to the state's school funding law by eliminating growth caps and phasing out adjustment aid. The employer payroll tax would be used to help make up the funding that Jersey City would lose under Senate Bill 2. NJBIA has opposed this tax increase on employers, and we're working with a coalition in Jersey City. It's called the Partnership for Jersey City to communicate the impact of a potential employer payroll tax to policymakers in Jersey City. And on Monday, we met with the council president as well as another member of council in Jersey City as well. Moving on to the Pennsylvania-New Jersey Reciprocal Income Tax Agreement. The bill requires the termination of any reciprocal personal income tax agreement to be done through legislative approval and signed by the governor. Currently, the governor can end such an agreement without legislative approval. And as you'll remember, in September of 2016, then Governor Christie announced that he would be ending the reciprocal income tax agreement between New Jersey and Pennsylvania, which had been in place since 1977. Ultimately, the agreement remained in effect because $200 million of the savings in the state budget had been realized through healthcare reforms. NJBIA supports S878, the reciprocal income tax bill, as businesses value predictability and certainty in policymaking. And we feel that the reciprocity agreement has served our region well, serving as a major talent recruitment and retention tool for businesses. And the last bill on this slide, the internet sales tax. After the Supreme Court ruling late last month in South Dakota versus Wayfair Incorporated, the legislature introduced and passed legislation that provides for the collection of sales tax from certain remote sellers. This bill requires a seller with no physical presence in New Jersey to collect sales tax on the purchase. The bill applies to sellers that have over $100,000 in taxable sales or 200 or more separate sales in a year. Additionally, the bill imposes sales tax collection and reporting requirements on a marketplace facilitator, or what some may refer to as a third-party seller. If this bill would be signed by the governor, the legislation would take effect on October 1st of 2018. Now, before I conclude my remarks, I wanted to provide you with a quick update on NJBIA's Post-Secondary Education Task Force. Following the release of our initial report in January, the education equation, strategies for retaining and attracting New Jersey's future workforce. The task force was broken down into 4 specific subgroups, and they include increased collaboration between state government, business and academia, post-secondary branding, expanding career and technical education programs and opportunities, and increasing the efficiency and affordability of education. These groups were tasked with identifying best practices and current initiatives, developing and prioritizing recommendations, and developing an education and advocacy plan along with necessary resources within each of these 4 groups. The goal of this work is to put forward more specific recommendations. The groups have submitted their initial drafts and we are reviewing them at this time. And we will continue to keep you updated on the progress of the task force. But as always, if you'd like to be engaged in this initiative, please do not hesitate to reach out to me, or you can even just type it into Vinny there and I can catch up with you after the fact. So at this time, I'm happy to take any questions on what was discussed today in regards to the fiscal year 2019 state budget.
Thanks, Andrew. We do have a couple questions already, but I want to give everyone else a moment to type in anything they have. While I'm doing that, I'd like to take a second to remind you about the Handouts tab. We get a lot of questions from people about how to download the slides. So just open up the tab marked Handouts in your GoToWebinar panel, and the file is right there. You can also just wait until tomorrow, and they'll be emailed to you along with the video recording of today's show. There's also the questions tab. If you have a question, type it in right there and I'll make sure Andrew answers it. And don't be shy, you've got an expert here, so make sure to take advantage of them. You're going to get a survey when this is done asking you what you thought of the webinar, and I can't tell you how lame it is to see people write things like, I was really disappointed because I thought Andrew would cover X, but didn't. If there's something relevant you'd like Andrew to cover, by all means, ask the question. So with all that out of the way, let's jump right into our first question that comes from Tino, who would like to know, how do you feel about the corporation tax changes?
Yeah, I mean, thank you for the question. It's something certainly that we're not happy with the outcome. We are concerned with how these changes are going to impact New Jersey's competitiveness and affordability moving forward. And that's something that we always strive for here, to make sure that New Jersey is a leader in competitiveness, whether it's nationally, but really within our region, and making sure that we are a state that is open for business and that companies want to invest in their capital here, but also invest in the state with employees. So we're concerned about the impact that they're going to have, and that's something that we continue to communicate to policymakers, and we hope that we will see. We expect that we'll see that taken into account moving forward.
Dwight asks, how does the budget address workforce development in terms of apprenticeship programs, new monies being made available?
Dwight, that's a great question, and if it's okay with you, I don't have that information in front of me today, but it's something I'll be happy to get back to you on offline, and Vinny has your information there. But I do know that the state, is applying for STEM apprenticeship grant opportunities through the United States Department of Education, and that's something that we are supportive of. We here at NJBIA feel that it's important that we have a highly skilled and trained workforce, so that our employers have that workforce to hire from in the future.
Cool, and I will definitely connect you guys after the fact. So Mike asks, in regards to the changes made to New Jersey's corporation business tax, will there be a cleanup bill or an opportunity to provide certain technical corrections to what was passed?
Yeah, the short answer is yes. The door was left open to come in and discuss any technical changes or clarifying language, in regards to a number of the provisions that were included in the corporate business tax bill, from combined reporting to the treatment of changes related to federal tax reform. And to that end, we have reached out to our membership requesting recommendations that they may have in terms of clarifying language or technical changes. So if there's anyone on the call today or that listens to it after the fact, if you have any suggestions, I would encourage you to reach out to me with those suggestions, and we'll make sure, once we have all those together, that we can, offer them as ways to address some of those technical corrections that may need to be addressed in this bill.
Cool. I have one more, but before I get into that, just keep them coming. I'll keep this going as long as Andrew is still available and as long as the questions come in. But in the meantime, Dennis asks, how large of an increase is the 2019 pension payment as compared to the 2018 one? And what do you anticipate the payment would look like next year?
Thanks, Benny. Yeah, so the pension payment in fiscal year 2019 is $3.2 billion, and that represents about a $700 million increase over fiscal year 2018. And while we won't know for sure until the fiscal year 2020 budget address, I would anticipate that the pension payment would be somewhere in the range of about $3.8 billion if Governor Murphy continues to follow the 10th schedule that the state has followed over the past few years, and he seems to be continuing that trend.
We have another one from Tino who asks, was there any additional funding made to combat drug and alcohol abuse?
Yeah, thank you. And I believe that there was additional funding to combat drug and alcohol abuse, especially, I should say, specifically to help combat the opioid epidemic. I don't have that number in front of me, but I'm once again happy to find that and connect with you offline.
Okie dokie. We have one from Jimmy. Are the time limits on the CBT surcharges set in stone? What would be the requirements to expand it beyond 2019?
So in terms of the CBT surtax, for tax years beginning on or after January 1st of 2018 through December 31st of 2019, that surtax is going to be 2.5%. And then for tax years beginning on or after January 1st of 2020 through December 31st of 2021, that surtax is going to be 1.5%. So at this point in time, those seem to be set in stone at the moment. But as we move forward and certainly have conversations about the impact of that, they could change, although I wouldn't anticipate that those rate changes over the next 4 years.
One from Joseph who asks, how do proponents and NJBIA justify the NJPA reciprocity when it seems to encourage New Jersey residents to move to Pennsylvania with immediate savings, more so for super wealthy 5 million plus people?
Thank you. Yeah, it is something that we have looked at, but ultimately, I mean, we have a membership that values certainty and predictability, and that's something that we consistently hear from our members. And one of the things that reciprocal agreement offers is it's really a major talent recruitment and retention tool for them. And when it was going to be pulled away in 2016, it was something that we advocated to keep because a lot of our members felt it was going to be a tax increase on their cost of doing business here in New Jersey.
Well, that looks like about all the questions we have, so I think it's a good time as any to bring this to a close. Don't forget, all of you will be receiving a recording of today's webinar and the PowerPoint slides via email. Lastly, when you close out of the webinar, a survey will come up on your screen that we hope you'll fill out so we can understand how best to provide you important information in a webinar format. Our next Live from the State Capitol webinar will take place Wednesday, September 12th, so by all means, feel free to register for that one right on our website at njbia.org. So until next time, for Andrew Musick, this is Vinny Civitello, thanking you for being with us this morning and wishing you a great day.